Yeshua taught us to pray in Matthew chapter number 6, your kingdom come and your will be done on earth, even as it is done in the heavens, suggesting to us that there is a vital connection between the will of heaven and the deeds of earth. And when you and I get the pattern right, that heaven and earth begin to function together and cooperate instead of actually battle one against the other. It's also played out in Genesis or Bereshit chapter 1, verse 1, where the heavens were created first, and then the earth was created to properly mirror what the heavens had already established. Such is the plight and the journey of man to bring about heaven's reality and to earth's functionality. Can we say it that way? Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Hey, doing good, Barry. Just got off with off the internet with Hanok doing a program there, and I just want to briefly touch on something. You know, this is not the only program you and I do. You do the 5 minute Torah every day, 5 days a week. Yeah. Oh, 10 minutes. That's right. Yeah.
I thought it was like say it in 5 minutes.
5 minute Torah, 10 minutes a day, or yeah, what, kind of like, at least it's not like Eddie Chumley's 5 minute update that takes about 30 minutes or more. But you do the 10 minute Torah. You do you're recording your services on Shabbat there at House of David. I have the Living Torah message that I do every week, and also a recording with Hanok Young, which, by the way, this one is special. We talk a lot about the BDS and also the Ben and Jerry's thing, the history of Ben and Jerry's, all that you didn't really know that you needed to know, but you really needed to know it. That will be online in just a few minutes after you and I finish recording this. So much is going on. You mentioned, Barry, this heaven and earth. Okay, this is not a new subject for us to talk about your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heavens. But as you're talking about this, I'm considering all that's going on in the earth today. Okay, we see the wildfires in the western states of the United States. Today, actually, we're starting to see the haze and smoke all the way in North Carolina that's coming from the west. We saw the things that are happening in Germany and Europe. These towns. I've been in some of those towns that the floods were happening up in Belgium. It's just, no matter where you look in the world, it's Cuba, it's South Africa, it's Haiti, it's everywhere. And when the heavenly realm and the earthly realm come into a mirror image pattern of each other. We see this in the Mishkan, the tabernacle. The earthly realm tabernacle was to be a mirror image of the functionality of the heavenly realm tabernacle, therefore bringing order in both. But what happens when the earthly realm is out of sync with the heavenly realm? I'm so tired of hearing global warming, weather change, all this stuff. It's never man's responsibility. It's now the moon's wobbling. Okay, now it's because I'm driving a truck. You're driving a truck that all this is happening. No, it is a lack of Torah. It is a lack of the order of the heavens, the heavenly realm, being lived out in the earthly realm that is bringing all this. So when someone says, well, that was an act of God. No, it's an act of man's godliness, or not godliness, but godlessness upon this earth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I worked for a guy. He was my boss a number of years ago. This is back 30 plus years ago. And he was a staunch fundamentalist Baptist. Okay. And he and I was a young, idealistic Church of God evangelist in those days. That I went out and preached on weekends whenever I could when I wasn't working. And he and I had a lot of discussions. And the way he described himself is this: I'm saved, truly saved. And there's always this difference between those that are saved and those that are truly saved.
Yeah. Just in case one of them backslid, you could say, well, they weren't truly saved.
Well, but at the time that he was saying that he was saved, truly saved, he acted against the norms of what would be acceptable in his own rank and realm of belief. With his language, his living situation where he was living with someone that he wasn't married to. And when I would kind of raise an eyebrow, he said, I'm saved, I'm just out of fellowship right now. And I always scratched my head as, okay, you giving yourself a disclaimer that says that you can be born again, but you don't have to necessarily live as one who is born again if you are acknowledging that you're out of fellowship, but you're still saved, you're still truly saved.
Okay,
it never wrapped my mind around that. But here's my thought, Mike. He had a head knowledge of what was right and correct, scripturally correct, truly correct, and the way that things ought to be. But it never got from here to here, or in his inner man, where his acknowledgement of truth actually affected his walk. You and I read something, you sent this to me about from Rob Cook in a commentary on this week's Torah portion. And he was suggesting that the scope and the reality of what heaven is and wants to be is in a place where we can read it and acknowledge it, but it doesn't become a reality until it gets into our inner man and we actually begin to function with it and carry it out. Knowing and doing are two different things.
So this is based upon a verse in this week's Torah portion. And for those of you that have never have never read anything of Rob Cook, I won't go into all the history of this man. He was an Orthodox rabbi. He was chief rabbi in Haifa. Was Rob Cook. A lot of what we do today, a lot of who we are today, goes back to Rob Cook. You know, I read Rob Cook and a number of other Jewish rabbis. I find that, and this may bother some people. That's why I'll say it anyway. I find that I agree with Rob Cook on much more than I agree with many Christian commentators today.
Yeah,
this man has a depth, and so if you don't have that, it's Kook. You can actually, Kahana Morrison does a weekly newsletter. It's where I got this morning. And he wrote a commentary on Devarim, chapter 4, verse 39. It says, know, or yada, know today and establish in your inner man that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is Elohim in heaven above and on earth below, there is none other. Now, here's the word, Barry. Therefore, okay, it's typical, okay, when you see the word therefore, find out what it's there for. In order to establish this which is prior to the therefore, we have something after it. And it says, you are to keep his Torah, his mitzvot, which I am giving you today. So here's your buddy you were working with. In his mind, you can be saved, or you can be truly saved, or you can be truly saved and actually walking out what you believed when you thought you were saved. Somehow I mean, excuse me if I sound a little judgmental here, but to use a good Hebrew word, I find that is a pack of baloney.
Mm-hmm.
That if your walk is not lining up, and when I say our walk not lining up, I was listening to a associate of mine the other day who was talking about in a business you and I are both part of. He says, we're not striving for perfection because perfection will frustrate you, because none of us can walk out perfection. There was only one that was perfect. I looked in my mirror, I'm still not. He said, we cannot be perfect, but we can be excellent. So in our walk should be excellent. In walking out that which is in our mind, which should be in our life, and the two should come together as one.
Yes.
So let's take it to something that I think you and I just stumbled on as we were, and we do a lot of stumbling on things. That's pretty much what our program has been for all these years, is stumbling on things. There's this whole movement today, Barry, about the gut health. Okay, the gut, our physical being. And if we look at the scripture, the natural is to teach us about the spiritual. So when you have things that are in the natural, you go out into creation and you look at a tree. You grow a tomato plant like you're doing and I'm doing. These are things that are to not just to function in the natural realm, but to teach us about the spiritual realm. So it is said that our gut, our physical gut, is like our second brain. And it sends signals, depending on its health, sends various signals to our brain, which then sends signals through our body. And our health is based upon that. There's an argument that I think is a very good one, that our gut is actually not our second brain, but our first brain. Because if our gut is telling our brain what to do, then our gut's actually the first brain, and our brain's the second brain, which is then sending signals to the rest of our body. Is that not true in the spirit?
We used to call it knowing down in your knower.
Uh-huh.
You have a device within you called your knower. It is this leading of the Ruach. There are issues and situations that we encounter where we see the red flags flying, like the cross arms at a railroad crossing and the red lights flashing, saying, you need to stop. You're in a conversation with someone and they say something and immediately something quickens inside you, good or bad. Either you identify the Father just used you to speak something to me, or else you're lying to me. We have that. It's been called erroneously the sixth sense,
mm-hmm.
But it is a spirit of discernment, is what it comes down to. The gift of discernment, where we discern that either stay away from a situation or this is Yah's will, you need to immediately move into it. We oftentimes are waiting for a heavenly messenger to come to us and say, this is what he said for you to do. Or more often than not, that's a rare occasion, a very rare occasion. More often than not, what you're going to get is a sense, a quickening of the spirit. And you're right, our gut, our discerning muscle, whatever you want to call it, needs to cooperate powerfully with our brain to tell our brain, this is what we're going to do. And then the brain ordered the body's movements and functions to get that accomplished.
Let me put it like this: that our knower needs to affect our doer. Okay, so when our knower affects our doer will affect our influencer.
Well, it may take a Southern man to figure that out.
Oh, we got two of them here. So if your word have I hid in my inner man. That word heart. Okay, yeah. I talked about this week. I've talked about this so many times. It's not the thumping thing. It's the inner man, the gut. I was in a meeting in Wilmington, North Carolina, many new moons ago, and the rabbi, and it was a congregation. I didn't know this. I was really young and really dumb at the time. I'm a little older now. I did not know the influence of this congregation was more on what would be called one house. I won't give initials of organizations that are like that, but they did not believe in two house. I had no clue of that, and so I go and I teach on two house. And at the end, the rabbi got up and he said this in front of the congregation. He says, "I want you to know that I disagree with most everything this man has just said. But I feel his passion in my guts, and because of what I have witnessed in my guts, I stand with him."
Wow.
He was saying, "I don't agree with the truth that he believes that he has, but I know that there's something there." See, passion. When something is moved from the thumping thing in your chest into your guts, the guts are the place that you digest. It's interesting when I do the teaching on the tabernacle that the laver, the brazen laver, is, if we put the person of Yeshua upon an execution stake, the laver would be at the place that the spear went through and the blood and water flowed out of his side. Mm. But if you put an image of a man there, it would be this place of the guts, the place in which water and blood, the churning of things to digest that which is in the natural and bring forth nutrient into the natural man. So it's a spiritual gut in which the life-giving blood of Messiah mixes with the life-giving word of the scripture to therefore break down the word into the nutrients that go into our spiritual being.
Wow, I'm thinking as you're talking about that, when our food has left the breakdown process in the stomach, it is when it goes into the small intestinal area that the nutrition of what we've eaten is absorbed into the walls of the small intestines and connects with the blood flow, where it then is delivered throughout our body. There has to be an understanding of what is desired from the heavenly realm for us. So that understanding is from this book. We read this book, we digest it in prayer. It might be said that your prayer chamber is your spiritual stomach. It's there that the truth is broken down to a place where what is commanded of us, instructed to us, then becomes digested. But Mike, it is when I take it and actually do it that it gets into the mainstream of who I am. Rob Cook quoted from the sages and said, quote, "First accept the kingdom of heaven and then the yoke of practical mitzvot," unquote. Mm-hmm. So if I know that he who sits in heaven desires for me to do a certain thing, let's make it simple, Shabbat. He wants me to observe and honor the seventh day and keep it set apart, Shabbat. Then when I digest that, I understand, okay, this is what honoring and keeping the Shabbat should look like according to what I read in the Word. Well, the Torah doesn't say this is the meal that you should have, this is that you should even have a meal, whether or not you should light candles or put a tablecloth on it, whether you should take a shower and change your garments. It doesn't say any of those things, whether you should sleep all day or whether you should study all day. It doesn't say any of those parameters, but I have to be honest in my spirit and digest that and then actually carry it out. I can't wake up on Sunday morning and say, you know what? I forgot to do Shabbat yesterday.
Wow, I forget.
You know, I just missed that altogether. You know, I need to do better about that.
Yeah. Maybe in the middle of Walmart going, wow, I forgot it was Shabbat. Yeah.
So, you know, there has to be a practical carrying out. The commands of heaven, the Torah, the teaching instruction of Yah's character and heart toward us. At times it can be mysterious. Sometimes we can get so deep into it that we lose the practicality of it. Mm-hmm. Yah, I think, is more interested in us walking out what we know than trying to discern at a level that we have no functionality at. So if I find the 50th degree of interpretation of a scripture, but there's no practical carrying out of it, there's no relevance to my daily living, then I've only affected my mind, my thinking. But my thinking needs to influence my hands and my doing.
So let's go back to the natural teaches us about the spiritual. Okay. Let's say that you have a meal. Okay. We're talking natural. You have a meal, nice meal, all kinds of different things. You enjoy that meal. It goes into your stomach. You don't do anything. You sit on the couch all the time. You don't go and do anything. You don't exercise. You don't get up. You don't move around. What are you going to become?
Blob.
You're going to become fat. You're going to become obese. Okay? And the more obese you become, the more useless you are of doing something. Because the more obese you are, the less you can do in your physical self. So for those, and I want to be understood here, for those that believe that all you need to do is just study, you know, all I want to do is study. But then you're not doing anything with that study. You can become spiritually obese. A spiritual couch potato.
Yes.
Because you're not affecting, this is why I said, your knower should affect your doer, which will affect your influencer, which is about our doing. Okay. Now here's an interesting one that I thought of as you were talking about this, that as we eat in the natural sense, Barry, it goes through your small intestine. And I'm not, you know, a medical person here that much, but it goes through your small intestine, and then there's waste product that goes through the rest of the system. The scripture has no waste product.
No.
The spiritual realm has no waste product. Only the natural realm has a waste product. So when we are tying ourselves into the purity of the spiritual realm, there will be less waste in our life in the natural realm.
Okay, let's take another angle here. You said eating a nice meal. What if I eat a meal that consists of snack foods and sodas?
And Ben and Jerry's ice cream that you shouldn't be eating because they don't allow it.
Got to get that one in there. And for those that don't know, Ben and Jerry's has joined the BDS movement and refusing to sell their products in Israel.
And interesting enough, and go to the Israel update, this was not a decision that was based on Ben and Jerry's Israel. It was forced on Ben and Jerry's Israel by Unilever,
which is the parent company.
The parent company. Okay, so we're sitting down. We have a choice. We can either eat a healthy meal or a meal of garbage.
Okay, if I am eating spiritual garbage, you can send your cards and letters to me. It's fine. If my digestion, spiritual digestion, consists of conspiracy theories or fanciful doctrines or wild interpretations of scripture, if I am looking for the next latest, greatest something to entice my mind, to where I can have a thrill ride of scripture, it may fill my stomach up and give me a feeling of being full, and I may be exhilarated about the fact, hey, that tasted good. It excited my taste buds, and my stomach's full, is full. When it comes to the digestion part, once I pray over it, a couple things can happen. Either I can be deceived by what I've eaten and thinking, because it tasted good, therefore it must be good and good for me. Or in my prayer chamber, I can discern, that really didn't help me a whole lot because I'm feeling sluggish and I want to take a nap. Good energy giving food will want to make me get up and move and do something.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm eating spiritual junk, I want to take a nap. And when it comes to absorption into my spiritual being and even my physical being, there's nothing going on. I'm not getting any nutrition. It's been noted, if you watch Frontier and Western movies or whatever, they're camping out. Invariably, there's going to be a scene where somebody's camping out at a fire at nighttime. And almost 90% of the time, I'm thinking, from what I've seen, what the meat that's over on the fire, it's either a plate of beans or a rabbit. You can eat all the rabbits you want to and starve to death because there's no nutrition in rabbit.
Well,
Zero.
Not only will you starve to death, you will poison yourself. Okay, this is the thing behind a rabbit. It's not that you will starve to death, but you will poison yourself through a lack of fats. It's protein poisoning, which is literally, it is a starving to death. But a rabbit has no fat, and so all you're getting is total protein, and you can literally poison yourself, kill yourself by eating. This is why the scripture says these things. Tree rats, squirrels, the same thing. It's a rabbit in the tree. It's got the same makeup.
But that, almost every time. Of course, I know they're not going to kill a cow out there in the middle of the frontiers somewhere. Nevertheless, we digress. There's one other point here I want to make before time runs out. We started off talking about praying that heaven and earth would agree. And our minds, we need to be a bit more discerning, I'm thinking, in that the agenda of darkness that we are seeing carried out in the earth and its varied forms and many manifestations right now is not being orchestrated by a red-suited devil figure on a throne and a fiery pit in hell somewhere.
Yeah.
Hasatan rules from the heavens. He's the prince of the power of the air. So when we say heavens, there are multiple layers of heavens, and I won't go into all of that right now, but the highest heavens belongs to the Most High. Most High is indicative of the fact there's none above him. But there is a rank of heavens, a low rank of heavens, just beyond the realm that we would look into the blue sky and see. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's up and above, but it's in a spiritual realm place. Let heaven and earth agree. No, let your heavens and the earth agree. There is spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. So there is a heavenly realm that we do not want manifested on the earth. I'm interested to hear your thought on that.
The heavenly realm is a realm of truth and lie. There's no gray area between the truth that's in that realm and the lie that's in that realm. Both angelic and demonic creatures both understand that it's either a truth or a lie, one of the two. It's in this earthly realm that we have that because people are not accepting the truth of the heavenly realm. They're bringing forth this confusion of the line between truth and a lie. The gray area between black and white is confusion. Is it black? Is it white? Well, it's neither, because it's confused. Lukewarm, as Yeshua spoke of in Revelation. Is it cold or is it hot? Is neither. Is confused. The scripture talks about mixture. Is it this? Is it that? No, because it's confused. And so what the scripture is doing to us when we go through the Torah cycle on a yearly basis, it's detoxing, back to that, is detoxing us from the contaminants that are causing confusion in our gut, which is causing confusion in our brain, which is causing confusion in our body. So we take the very principles of the natural and put those principles into the spiritual, the results are going to be different. I mean, consider, Barry, that, and this is a hypothetical, I don't have enough faith for this one, but consider that tomorrow all the political leaders, the United Nations, they all came together and said, we have decided that we are going to go by the words of this book. We're going to no longer have Sunday, but we're going to have Shabbat. The Pope says, that was a mistake years ago, guys. We lied. We're going back to Shabbat. we're no longer going to eat pork. We're not going to eat shellfish. We're not, we're going to go back to the word. Guess what? If we quit eating the things that are called unclean in Scripture, the bay that you live by would be clean again in a matter of years.
Mm-hmm.
If we would go back to living this word, this truth, we would not be dealing with the confusion in the climate. Here's what I said this morning in a thought for the day. It's on Facebook. And this is off of Branson and Bezos and what they're doing. Man is attempting to dwell in the heavens, while the heavens are attempting to dwell in man. I do not believe that man will ever be allowed to set up permanent places in the heavens, because the Father will not allow the confusion of the earth to inhabit his heavens.
Yeah. Interesting thought. That's an interesting thought. So, boiling it all down to this, you read the word to understand the mind of the heavens, Yah's righteous will. Being mindful that feel good theology that says God is only love and he's only good to us, and that kind of mindset where we love and accept everybody no matter what they're doing and how they're doing it, and just come on in and sit down and worship with us. That kind of theology, it appears as light, but it's not truth. If we read the word and we take what we read as the mind of heaven and digest it in a prayer chamber and seek his face over it, it ought to lead to a righteous walk and an upright lifestyle. Our doing. The question is, are you spiritually healthy or not?
Well,
how are you walking?
Yeah. Well, as you're boiling it down in the natural and in the spiritual, leave the crawdads out. Yeah, I could come up with something like that. When you're boiling down life, leave the crawdads in the creek.
I got a feeling we're going to see that on Facebook before it's all said and done.
There's an insight into how I think, which is no one should ever have to have that.
Oh, man. All right. Well, folks, thank you for watching Foundations for Life. Hopefully something said today will instigate a heart for prayer and seeking the Father's face and walking uprightly. If you have questions and comments, please leave them at the end of the video. We'd be glad to read those and respond. Thank you so much again for sharing on your social media pages. Yeah. That's very much appreciated. And shalom to all of you until we see you again next week.